Hi there, guys. God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Very interesting article coming from exposenews.com. Sort of dovetails into what we were talking around yesterday. We were talking about Canada, America's northern neighbors. Well, today we're going to be looking at Mexico, America's southern neighbors. This title reads Mexican government tries to implement biometric registration for mobile phones. Millions don't comply, and this is what's awesome, and the government backs down. Going to be exploring that particular article and bringing some other news relating to Mexico. Want to start with the word of God was given Mark 4 verse 21, which reads, do you bring in a lamp to put it under a bowl or a bed? Instead, don't you put it on its stand? For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. It's really interesting, isn't it? For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed. It's that exposing, isn't it? It's the, shining the light upon it. And whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. It's one of the reasons why we've been looking at the Committee of 300 and the 13 families and, the 33 and exposing the Illuminati and Freemasonry, the Club of Rome, the Bilderbergs, and the WEF. We're going to get into some of those guys soon. But really interesting verse for us that the Lord does shine his light upon things. He does reveal. That's part of the reason why they avoid him being the truth. But this article I thought was really amazing. This one reads, Mexican government tries to implement biometric registration for mobile phones. Millions don't comply, and the government backs down. God bless you, serving the Almighty Father. Bless you. Welcome, guys, here. Isn't that absolutely amazing? What happens with a little bit of pushback? What happens to actually ignoring these, tyrannical sort of like rules, etc.? Don't see that in Vietnam when the government turned around and just silenced 186 million bank accounts because they refused the digital ID. Here you have Mexican government tries to implement it. Want to take us to a little bit of a backdrop to how things got here with this. This is sort of like in April, this all came about and was reported on. Mexico forces every phone user into Agenda 2030 surveillance system, biometric slave grid activated. That's literally the article. So every single phone is to be surveyed, before Agenda 2030. Mexico has become the country to flip the switch on the end of anonymous communication, and the globalist architects of Agenda 2030 are threatening to roll out the plan in America next. As of January the 9th this year, every single mobile phone line in Mexico, whether it's prepaid, postpaid, physical SIM, or eSIM, must be biometrically registered to a verified government ID or face total cutoff by June the 30th. That's roughly 127 million numbers. Every call, every text and data ping forever tied to a real human face, fingerprints, and iris scan. Guys, this is where it's all heading. We've been speaking about, Canada and China and the state of the UK and other places around the world, exposing what it is that they're doing, all being of one mind. And here you have literally rolling out different versions of digital IDs and different versions of age verification and social media bans, all of the things that they just sing in harmony to. The official story, well, according to the Mexican government, is about fighting crime and extortion. The real story, a textbook rollout of the centralized digital identity grid the United Nations, World Economic Forum, and their puppet governments have been engineering for years. This isn't a local telecom tweak. This is a live fire test of the surveillance architecture demanded by UN Sustainable Development Goal 16.9, which reads, legal identity for all, including free birth registration. There's a dangling carrot. By 2030. Mexico is capitulating to the globalist agenda shamelessly. Forget burner phones, forget the last fragile pockets of off-grid communication. Under the new rules, every number is now a permanent digital fingerprint. Mexico is simultaneously rolling out biometric curb upgrades, facial recognition, fingerprints, the works. So the system isn't just know your customer, it's know your every move, every contact, and every descent. Nothing is going to be private at all. Telecom giants aren't the villains here. They're the compliant foot soldiers. The real architects sit in Davos and in New York, where the WEF have spent years preaching digital public infrastructure. And we've covered this over the years, haven't we, guys? As we've journeyed together, you know, digital ID, digital passport, CBDC, social credit score systems, as well as everything else technologically that's been set up around us, the flock cameras, the CCTV, you know, HARP and all of the other sort of like frequencies that are there, you know, MK Ultra and all of this sort of stuff. So we've sort of like spoken around this digital public infrastructure. And all they do is shine it as a path to inclusion and sustainability. But the real translation to this, guys, is total visibility equals total control. Bless you guys for being here. It's great to have you with us. The dominoes are falling. We were saying that the other day, just around the Club of Rome and the 10 Kingdoms and Canada and Greenland also being there. That's going to be a really fast-paced domino effect. You throw in a false flag and everything else to push these, you know, sort of like digital IDs over the line, this papers, please, or you get the internet cut off for like 2-3 days or even a week. People will be just, you know, bowing down to submit their biometric data, their iris scans, their facial recognition, absolutely everything. And the whole point is that these phones and these devices have already been taking that and doing that for years. Like we said yesterday, in the case of Canada as well, and it being a crime scene, they're making all of their crimes legal this time round, justifying all of the tyranny that we endured. This continues. The dominoes are falling. WEF aligned nations are first. Look around. This isn't isolated. It's the script. India's ADAR system already fused biometrics with everything from banking to welfare. So this is what we've been saying on our channel, and part of our real heart here on our channel, guys, if you're new to us, is that we expose the beast system. We try and model and mirror, that we didn't bow down to it or obey what it was literally coming out with. We turned away from these things. The Lord always provides us with an alternative. I think he's given us that now in the blessing of time to make these adjustments before all of these things come to pass. And as we've seen in China, we're going to see it. We've seen it in Canada, starting to see that in the UK, ending of borders and you know, the removal of national sovereignty. Seeing so much division as well as wars all kicking off left, right, and centre. So it's our heart here to turn around and say, no, we expose you, because the tribulation saints are going to be the ones that are going to be having their lives on the line when it comes to submitting to all of these mandatory things, all of these chips, all of these marks, just to be able to buy and sell. And Bill Gates saying by 2028 that you're not going to be able to participate in society without these sorts of things. Yet we're seeing all this technology being, you know, hacked in the case of France, in the case of India as well, and then all of people's personal data gets sold on the black market. Can you imagine what doors this could potentially open with people sort of like, you know, taking things from your phone or pictures, maybe, that are really personal to you, using those as blackmail tools and the like. We're going to see so much more of that. So it's really important that we keep an eye on just also, what's happening around us. But India's ADAR system already fused biometrics with everything from banking to welfare. This is what's absolutely astonishing. The digital IDs, the mission creep, the slow reveal, or the slow boil. It all leads to the same end and just gets expanded upon. And it's absolutely ridiculous. So it ties in every aspect of your life to this digital ID. They're not going to be making it any different for any other nation because we're going to go through those. China's social credit nightmare uses facial scans at every turn. You see our Telegram channel where we put out these drones and they're just going around being policing everything. This is what will happen is that we'll have all the technology around to surveil you, be able to read and stop you and find out exactly who you are, where you're going, what's going on. And then we'll, release the drone armies all ahead and follow you and start shouting at you, through your neighborhoods. The EU's eIDAS 2.0 digital wallet is also marching forward. Brazil, Nigeria, Pakistan, and a dozen others have already imposed mandatory SIM registration with biometric creep. Been speaking about it in my banking, it's been asking me that for absolutely years. And at the moment, it's voluntary. But part of that is sort of like a grooming, planting a seed, being really annoying, and just being around for when it's actually mandated and it's forced. WEF aligned governments are toppling like dominoes, each one sold to the public as safety while quietly building the interlocking control grid. Mexico is the latest brick in the wall and Latin America's test case before the real prize, wait for it, North America and Europe. It's coming to our doors, guys. Smart cities, 15-minute prisons, and the end of freedom. The same elites pushing this love to wax poetic about smart cities and 15-minute cities. On paper, walkable neighborhoods, less traffic, sustainability. In reality, geo-fenced human cattle pens where your movement, purchases, energy use, and speech are all monitored through the same digital ID that now controls you and your phone. It's insane, isn't it? Those human cattle pens with all the technology they're putting up. When every phone is registered, every transaction is cashless, and every neighborhood is smart, compliance becomes the price of existence. This is how the whole world is going to be looking before we get anywhere out of here. They'll be finding people, they'll be imprisoning people, they'll have those guys turning up and knocking on your door, but they'll also start, trying to put in re-education camps, labor camps, maybe even, and then ultimately that will lead to death camps and just chopping people's heads off. Step out of line, criticize the climate scam, skip the next mRNA booster, question the latest WEF edict, and watch your access get throttled. Orwell didn't just predict this, he gave it a name. Big Brother. The pattern is unmistakable. First, they link your identity to your phone, then to your bank, then to your travel, then to your food, your speech. Individually, each step sounds reasonable. Collectively, it's the architecture of a digital dictatorship dressed up in Agenda 2030 buzzwords. The risk they don't want you calculating. Criminals, well, they'll adapt. VPNs, foreign SIMs, encrypted apps. The real targets are you and your neighbors. Ordinary citizens stripped of the last shred of anonymity. One massive data breach, one national emergency, as we've been saying, one misinformation crackdown, and the system flips from convenience to weapon. America, America's turn is already in motion. Don't think this stays south of the border. US lawmakers are already floating federal grants to push states towards NIST approved digital IDs, mobile driver licenses, and secure identity credentials. Enrolls ICE. Bills are moving through Congress right now to modernize state systems for exactly this kind of centralized tracking. The infrastructure is being prepared while the public is distracted by the next circus. Canada, the UK, Australia, all WEF darlings are marching in lockstep. The Great Reset isn't coming, it's here, and Mexico just gave the globalists a working prototype. So that's a kind of like backdrop to how things got to where they are. Mexico forcing every phone user into the Agenda 2030 surveillance system, biometric slave grid activated. And we're going to be looking at today the article coming from Expose News. Mexican government tries to implement biometric registration for mobile phones. Millions don't comply, and the government backs down. 1st of July was the deadline for Mexicans to register all of the estimated 158 million mobile phones, pay-as-you-go SIM cards using their personal biometrics as identification. Non-compliance meant the SIM card would be disconnected and unusable. Comply or else, isn't it? It's astonishing. But the Mexican government's policy was, for now at least, defeated by millions of ordinary people who didn't comply. Millions just quietly carried on with their lives, and by simply not complying, ordinary Mexicans forced one of the most ambitious biometric registration programs in the world to retreat, at least for now. This is what we're able and capable of doing, guys. Governments rarely announce that they're building a surveillance system. See videos on our Telegram channel around where they're hiding these flock cameras so deviantly. They announce that they're keeping you safe. We've never been more unsafe. They announce that they're stopping criminals. The government are the real criminals. They announce that it is just a phone registration, nay bother, or a traffic filter, or an age check, or a digital ID, and that if you've got nothing to hide, well, you've got nothing to worry about. Mexico said all of those things, and then 127 million people quietly said, nah. On July the 1st, every mobile phone in Mexico that wasn't linked to a real named person whose identity the Mexican government could verify was due to be switched off. Seeing all of these phones all of a sudden being activated and everyone being pinged. Not just some phones, every pay-as-you-go phone. An estimated 158 million active mobile lines in a country of around 130 million people. To keep their phone working, Mexican phone users had to register it using their CURP, pronounced CURP, which is basically Spanish for Unique Population Registry Code. Think of it a bit like a national insurance number, but used for even more things: your tax, your healthcare, school enrollments, driver licenses, your benefits. It's been around since 1996. Most Mexicans have one from birth. Without it, navigating daily life in Mexico is genuinely difficult. But the 2026 law takes this somewhere new. Registration doesn't just require a CURP number, it requires biometric data. It's like, where is the privacy? Where is the autonomy gone for all of this? These are the questions that we need to be asking. Do we want some of these phone devices? Do we want some of these smartphones? and this smart technology, which is nothing more than, a surveillance tool. Continuing with this, biometric data is a physical information that is unique to you and you alone. And I want to explain this carefully because many people think of it as just a fancy photo or moving your head in front of a screen. It's much more than that. Think of it this way: your fingerprint, the precise shape of your face, the pattern of the iris in your eye, the colored ring around your pupil. This is as unique as a fingerprint and just as permanent. These aren't things you choose, they're simply part of you. What makes biometric data fundamentally different from any other kind of personal information is this: if your password is stolen, you change your password. If your bank card details are stolen, you can cancel the card and get yourself a new one. But if your fingerprints, your facial map of your iris pattern are stolen or misused, you cannot change them. Not ever. You can see loads of people with like missing eyes and stuff as people are being sort of like popping those out just to sort of like access their, finances. These are permanent. Once that data exists somewhere, it exists somewhere forever. Mexico is asking for a photograph, fingerprint scans, and iris scans. For all of this facial recognition technology, all of these smart glasses, all linked to each person's CURP code and stored by their individual phone company. The law also created something called a Unified Identity Platform managed by Mexico's Ministry of the Interior. This platform connects the biometric CURP with the healthcare system too. In other words, the same system that knows your phone number will also know your medical history. It will know everything about you. It will bring up everything. All of the things that are personal and private that you don't want people to be seeing. This isn't quite the same as a single unified digital ID. It's something a little quieter, but in some ways more significant. A government identity number that is slowly becoming compulsory for more and more parts of everyday life in Mexico. A phone, tax affairs, social security, and healthcare. Not all at once. This is what they don't do it. They don't all do it at once unless they're really obvious. But piece by piece, until life in Mexico without it becomes almost impossible. This is where we're heading, guys. I always want to give you both sides. So let's start with a case for this because it's a genuine one. Mexico has a serious, well-documented problem with extortion and kidnapping carried out by criminals using anonymous, untraceable phones. Before this law, anyone could walk into a petrol station, buy a SIM card, the small chip that connects a phone to a network, put in a phone, and make calls without giving anyone their name. Criminals and organized gangs use this to carry out kidnapping, extortion, and fraud without being traced. And this is well documented in Mexico. The Mexican government also points out that requiring ID to buy a SIM card is already common around the world. Oh, there you go. It's all justified, isn't it? They claim 166 countries already do it. Independent research puts the number somewhere between 90 and 157. Continues with this. Here's the part most people don't know. This is actually Mexico's third attempt at this. The first two failed. This is what's really interesting, isn't it? They'll just regurgitate it, and recycle it. In 2008, the first attempt, Mexico launched a phone registry called Renault, always asking everybody to register their phone number with their national ID code. According to multiple verified sources, the database was hacked and the data sold on the black market. There you have it. Allegedly by or through corrupt government officials. This is what it's all about. It doesn't remain with the service provider, it gets passed on. Though this was never proven in court for as little as $500. Instead of helping catch criminals, it became what one source called a shopping list for extortionists, who now had verified names and addresses linked to people's phone numbers. That was abandoned in 2012. 2021, the second attempt. Mexico tried this all over again, this time asking for biometric data too, fingerprints and facial recognition. That was interesting, isn't it? Oh, it starts with fingerprints. It will start with facial recognition, and then we'll add as well iris scans on top of that. And yet people, are so, you know, they're sheep, aren't they? And they just comply. On the 28th of February 2022, Mexico's Supreme Court, the highest court in the country, ruled the law unconstitutional, finding it wasn't proportionate given the scale of what was being asked of ordinary people and raising serious concerns about the government permanently holding everyone's most sensitive physical data. The third attempt this year, rather than accept the answer told no by the courts on behalf of the people, ignore that, the Mexican government redesigned the system, rebranded it, renamed it, relaunched it. The Supreme Court objected to one centralized government database. So the 2026 system routes verification through individual phone companies, instead check against a system run by a different governmental agency. The outcome for ordinary people is the same. The legal structure is different. Whether this genuinely addresses the Supreme Court's concerns or whether it simply moves the same data to a different shelf is a question only the courts can ultimately answer. And I find what's really amazing that they've turned around and they've declined that. By late May 2026, Carlos Slim, the Mexican billionaire, one of the wealthiest people on the planet and chairman of America Movil, the parent company of Telcel, publicly called for the process to be reconsidered. The registration process, he says at his annual press conference in May, was very complicated and should be registered. When the country's most powerful businessmen and majority of its population are saying the same thing, something has clearly gone wrong. But they don't want to do that in nations like here in the UK, where there's 3 million votes that say they don't want digital ID. When 186 Vietnamese turn around and say, no, we don't want your digital ID, right, you'll face the consequences. We'll just, block your bank accounts and freeze your accounts like the truckers in Canada. Look what they're also doing here. It's a case of comply with this or else. By late June, approximately only 49.5 million of an estimated 158 million active lines had been registered. So that was only about 31%. Millions of ordinary people simply hadn't complied. This is what we have to also say. I'm not going to comply with that. Fine, I'll face the consequence to it. But look what happens when the 99 speak up. On Thursday, 25th of June this year, just days before the deadline, the CRT announced an extension. Importantly, contract phone users, people who pay a monthly bill, no longer need to register at all. So it's the backtrack. The government blinked. Millions of ordinary people, not by marching or organising, just by carrying on with their lives, forced one of the most ambitious biometric registration programs in the world to retreat. It's impeccable. And it shows us something important. When a government moves too fast, asks too much and the truth isn't there, people start to notice. And sometimes quietly, they just don't comply. That's worth remembering. Your data is your gold, and you have more control than you think. Thought that was a really interesting article. Just see the mission creep, and this all being carried out all before the 2030, year. It's inconceivable. Hi guys, God bless you. Good to see where you're at. Thanks for being here. Have you heard about the Noahide Congress? Yes, we've got a video on our I think it's on our Rumble account. If it's not, it's on in our Telegram account, where we basically just put up that sort of like they're meeting in November this year to implement all of their laws and their policies. Everything's all been signed off. We know about that, Bush's and also Trump, adding to that. We've got a video there around guillotines and everything that's connected to the Noahide laws. Yeah. Yeah, the penalty for, sort of blasphemy, as well as sort of professing the name of the Lord Jesus, they would consider that to be idolatry, and that's off of your head, and it's a killable offence. So yeah, severe. Hi Nexus, I'm excited to see our Lord, whether at His coming or received in faith. Yep, keep our eyes on Jesus. Amen. This is it. It's part of it. Many of us are going to probably be harassed and more bullied and find things more increasingly difficult for us. As we sort of like push back a little bit or we hold our ground somewhat. This is what's so important, that as the church that's here, that we turn around and say, we're not going to submit, we're going to hold off, we're going to push back on this darkness, we're going to push back on these overreaches by these governments, and we're going to stand firm, and we're going to show this is how you do that. The tribulation saints will be literally putting their lives, on the line or else. At the moment, we don't have that. But it's really interesting what can happen when you're pushing back. Hi there, guys. Yeah, there you go. Thank you for adding that. Good conversations. Hi, Sherry, bless you. Hi, Laurie. Good to have you guys here with us. Okay, so that's what happens when people actually stand up. Just want to just like quickly read out, if I can. 20 other times where people stood up and pushed back. The Glorious Revolution in England. In 1688, James II lost support so fast that the whole structure around him seemed to go as soft at once. Parliament invited William of Orange in, but the story only works because James had already alienated so many people that resistance collapsed and the monarchy was remade under public and political pressure. See what happens when people stand up and push back and say no. There's going to be those in the tribulation that are going to be literally, having to make that choice. I'm either going to take that mark of the beast, feed my stomach for a little while temporarily, or that's the consequence. Let's look at the second, the French Revolution. France in 1789 was the classic case of a government that looked absolutely right up until it did not. The Haitian Revolution. This one wasn't just a revolt, it was enslaved people and free people of colour destroying the French colonial regime and building a new state in its place. What about the July Revolution in France? France managed to do it again in 1830, which is one of history's more pointed reminders that restoring a dynasty does not restore legitimacy. Let's look at another one, the February Revolution in France. Love it. That's what I love about the French. They just kick off, don't they? It's like habits. Then came 1848, when another French king discovered that public patience has an ending. That's what's probably going to be happening with these digital IDs. There's going to be a huge amount of people that will not be taking this around the world. It is literally going to get really ugly, and I'm not so sure that they're going to be able to pull it off and do it. I think they're going to have to inside job, false flag, 9/11 it styly to get it over the line. Here, the Xinhai Revolution in China. The Qing dynasty had been weakening for years, and by 1911, that weakness was visible enough for revolution to spread. The February Revolution in Russia. The Russian Empire did not fall because one speech landed perfectly. It fell because war, hunger strikes, and mutiny piled on top of one another until they'd had enough. The German Revolution in 1918. Sailors mutinied, workers and soldiers' council spread, and the German monarchy gave way under the pressure of defeat and unrest. The Iranian Revolution. The Shah's government looked heavily armed, heavily backed, and heavily entrenched, which made it collapse in 1979 feel all the more startling. Yeah, the people power revolution in the Philippines. This is one of those moments that stays vivid because the images are so specific. Crowds in the streets, soldiers hesitating, nuns kneeling in front of tanks. Yeah, that brought an end to that regime. The fall of communist rule in East Germany. East Germany did not collapse in one clean, heroic scene, but the weekly demonstrations, the public pressure, and the sheer scale of exit and dissent made the regime unworkable. So it is about protesting. It is about signing petitions. It is about having your voice heard. Immaterial of what they do with the end results. We all know it's a foregone conclusion. But just to be there to be saying, hey, nah, no, you don't. The Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia. The Velvet Revolution still feels almost improbable because of how quickly a rigid system gave way once mass demonstrations took hold. It's what we're going to be seeing now with the farmers as well. See our videos on Telegram around, in the Netherlands. They're also just kicking off because they're killing, agriculture and farming and making it impractical for people to cope. You say goodbye to the farming, you say goodbye to the food source. Already getting sketched out by what's in the water, and that's sort of like being quickly depleted by all of these data centers. Let's go for the Romanian Revolution. Romania was tougher than the name revolution sometimes lets on. What began as protests widened into national revolts. The regime turned violent and the whole system was overthrown. The bulldozer revolution in Serbia. In 2000, after a disputed election, huge crowds poured into Belgrade and made it impossible for Slobodan Milosevic to cling to his office. The Rose Revolution in Georgia. Georgia's 2003 uprising had rare qualities of being both theatrical and effective. Protesters carrying roses disrupted parliament. Public anger over fraud kept building, and clear the old arrangement could not be patched back together. He stood down. The Orange Revolution in Ukraine. The Orange Revolution was less about storming a palace than refusing to accept a stolen result. Look at what they've been doing with all of these elections as well. Which is, wow. The Tulip Revolution in Kazakhstan. Uprising grew out of anger over corruption and disputed elections, and once protesters spread, it was clear that the government had made a mistake, and by public frustration, they called for the guy's resignation. The Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia. Tunisia's uprising began with one desperate act and then widened into something bigger. It's about protesting. This is why they want to be taking away your and our freedom to protest. Using those places with all of the, intrusive facial recognition cameras as well. Just doesn't have anything to do with that. It starts with those particular proceedings, and then it sort of like migrates where you've got vans of those guys just literally, in high streets and just, putting them all up while we're asleep. The Egyptian uprising. Egypt moved with dizzying speed that winter, huge demonstrations against corruption. And lastly, the Sudanese revolution. Sudan's 2019 uprising began over bread prices and grew into something much broader and more dangerous for the regime. You can see all this when it comes to looting. If they end up having some sort of a EMP or cyber attack, can you just imagine the looting and the crime and everything else that'd be kicking off there? So I thought that was really important just to bring in those sort of things where actually we've seen through history where people have had the courage and the heart to stand up against some of this, sort of like government overreach by protesting, by signing petitions, by literally not having enough and allowing their voices to be heard, which is why it's all been so silenced. And the whole point to this is that we have rights, we have human rights. And I want to go through just a few of those with you. Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Tell that to abortion. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 2, everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, colour, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other statuses. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, and international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under other limitation of sovereignty. So important that we know this. Article 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. The right to life, really, with the culture of death, being sterilized through the water, being sprayed overhead as well. The GMO foods, the poisoning of everything with the food supply, everything being weaponized against you. Liberty and freedom, really? Are you really free? Been saying on our channel, you're not. You live in an open air prison. And what, the security of a person? What's that person's sort of like ability to be able to hide all of their age, race, and sexuality, religion, all that sort of stuff, and have some autonomy about themselves? Security of a person, really, when there's forced vaccines and mandates, etc., and all the coercion attached. Article 4, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Tell that to the sex trafficking trade. Tell that to all the paedophiles. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Tell that to Hollywood. Article 5, no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishments. Tell that to social credit score systems and the humiliations that people endure in China and around as well for non-compliance or, for breaking a rule and you're losing a social credit point. Tell that to Guantanamo Bay. Article 6, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Tell that to the womb. Article 7, all are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. Tell that to banning Bibles, banning prayers, protesting, freedom of speech. All are entitled to equal protection. Two-tier justice system, anyone? Let's go to Article 8. Everyone has the right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunals for acts violating the fundamental rights granted him by the Constitution or by law. Don't see that, do we? Article 9. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Tell that to the street preachers. Article 10, everyone is entitled to full equality to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal. And now they're getting rid of judges as well to speed up their backlog, so they say. Can you imagine not being prosecuted by your peers whatsoever? One person gets to decide that. Wow. Yeah, let's go to Article 11. Everyone charged with a penal offence has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty according to law in a public trial. That's not what they do with pre-crime, is it? It's like military law is. You are guilty until you are proven innocent. In civilian law, it is the reverse. You are innocent until you are proven guilty. So why are you treating us all as if we're criminals with the surveillance and the dishonesty and the distrust that runs around, and this voyeuristic, which is so perverse, wanting absolutely every detail of us? I wouldn't trust any guy or person with that information. Article 12, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy. Tell that to, all of the Bill C-22, C-9s and 4s in Canada, and the biometric, overreach that we've been talking about today on our live with Mexico. No, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, with his family. How they want to be raising your children. The state wants to raise them and takes away your parental responsibility, wants to alienate them. Also their home, or their correspondence, who it is that they message. You're going to be flagged up, like we were speaking about, Canada yesterday, where they're going to be a knock on your door, like there is over here in the UK, about what you posted 3 years ago. This platform as well still punishes you, even if you've deleted the videos. Nor attack upon his honour and reputation. Tell that to the trolls that we report and nothing ever comes of it. And all the porn that used to be on here and everything else that was really deviant and dark. All of the scams that are still prevalent. Everyone has a right to the protection of the law against such interference or attacks. The UK police and the whole police state around the world have been weighed and measured, and they've been found wanting. Article 13, everyone has the right to freedom of movement. They can stick you in a lockdown, allow you to have one walk a day like a good little boy. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement. That means if you're going to go for a prayer walk around an abortion clinic, so be it. And residents within the border of each state, everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. But we don't do that, do we? We just, over in the UK, just ban certain people, referees and the like, for the World Cup. Have countries that would do that? No, I'm sorry, you do not represent British interests, so we're going to stop you from speaking at this particular rally. Even Nazi Germany allowed their sort of adversaries as such in. Where does that tell you where we are now? Article 14, everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in another country asylum from persecution. But this isn't that, is it? See, these boats don't have women and children and all of that. They're not sort of like bigging up those big massive images. They're all fighting men. It's not refugee, it's an invasion. We can no longer, as Brits, sing Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. We can't even keep dinghies out. You know what I mean? Goodness me, what this tells our enemies. This right may not be invoked in the case of prosecutions generally arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. This is the whole point of setting everything up for the Club of Rome's 10 Kingdoms. To blur national identity, to destroy national sovereignty, to be mixing with the races, for there to be this takeover. Article 15. Everyone has the right to a nationality. Oh, don't tell the Brits that, where they're having their flags removed and people around the world are having their national flags being torn down because it upsets a minority. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality or denied the right to change his nationality. Article 16, men and women of full age without any limitations due to race, nationality, they are entitled to equal rights as to marriage. Marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. Please see Islam and they're marrying off 8-year-olds and giving them over to 40 and 60-year-olds. Because that's Sharia law. All against the will. Please see our video on our Telegram channel yesterday. Heartbreaking. Article 17, everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. This kind of like great reset, you shall own nothing. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. Who really owns that? Article 18, everyone has a right to freedom of thoughts. Tell that to the intrusive brain-computer interfaces. Everyone has a right to conscience and religion. This includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in a community with others, and in public or private. There you go. Tell me what I can and can't do in my home when it comes to praying because I live in an area where there's an abortion clinic. Come on. To manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. So, what gives with the Bible ban then? Please explain that to me, because I don't see the elites having the audacity to do that to the Quran. Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion. Oh, well, not on this platform. You say the wrong things. We're going to shadow ban you, blacklist you, AI, algorithms, humans running interference, and oops, my bad, we had a technical fault. Have a right to those freedoms and opinions and express those. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without being coerced or manipulated or mind raped with a controlled narrative, without interference, and to seek. Well, it doesn't really matter. We're only going to give you state sanctioned approved learning and delete everything else and get you relied and stupefied on the AI overview and ideas, though media and regardless of frontiers. So it says, receive and impart information. This is what we're doing, and ideas through media and regardless of frontiers. So why is it that they're unsubscribing? Why is it that they're not notifying? Why is it that they're doing all of that? Article 20, everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. But no, they get dispersed, they get sprayed at, don't they? They get beaten in the streets. And then you get George Soros thrown in a few sort of like groups just to stir it all up. And then, oh, there you go. A policeman fell over and broke his little toe. Now we're going to have to really come down heavy on you and deny your right to protest. No one may be compelled to belong. So no one may be compelled to belong to an association. Article 21, everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country, directly or through freely chosen representatives. Article 22, everyone as a member of society has a right to social security, really, and is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation. Article 23, everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment. Look at how that's all happening with the fourth industrial revolution and AI and robots now taking over and everyone losing their jobs. Everyone without any discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. Tell that to the slave labor that occurs around the world. Everyone has the right to just and favourable remuneration ensuring for themselves. Article 24. I'll leave it with this one. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitations of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. And how enormously people are overworked. Some people having to do like 2 or 3 jobs as well. Just found that really, really interesting. And we've been speaking up on our live here. God bless you guys. Appreciate you being here. Okay. Just around standing your ground. Just want to leave you with some scripture. Yeah. Stand your ground. Ephesians 6:10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand firm, stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth. Proverbs 25:26, like a muddied spring or a polluted fountain, is a righteous man who gives way before the wicked. 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. 2 Thessalonians 2:15. So then, brothers, stand firm and hold to the traditions that you were taught by us, either by our spoken word or by our letter. 2 Corinthians 10:5. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God and take every thought captive to obey Christ. Some really powerful scripture there for us. Guys, we've looked at the article coming from the expose. The government, the Mexican government tries to implement biometric registration for mobile phones. Millions don't comply. There's a nod for each and every one of us. And the government backs down. This is what it's about, trailblazing in these particular incidents. We also took a little look at where Mexico forced every phone user into Agenda 2030 surveillance system, into a biometric slave grid that's activated. And then we looked at 20 incidences throughout history, guys, where the people have pushed back. Yeah, where they've turned around, and this is why they're trying to stop the protests. It's in your human rights. We just covered some of those. The right to protest. They don't want that. But look what also happened in history when people did start to get like that, and they did start to push back. But this is what will be occurring. I suspect it will be UN boots on the ground. You know, they'll say, oh, we'll have your troops and you can have ours. All of these sorts of deals. And then we've just looked at some verses, guys, in and around how it is that we can hold our ground, how it is that we can make the most of our time now and be good stewards of that, being prepared for some of these impositions that are going to be placed on us and our lifestyles, our banking, our healthcare. Have we thought about some of that? Do we need to be a little bit more secure with some of the things that we've got on our devices now, bearing in mind what's, we're all sort of like staring down the barrel of. Have you got certain things hidden? Have you got other things sort of like, uploaded and the like, things that they'll probably be able to access and then delete and then, fine you for having on your phone and your device. There's going to be no sort of like safety. And that's the whole point is that people will be so exasperated with phones, they will happily turn around and say, yeah, man, just put it underneath it. I've had enough. And they'll just bow down to it. The grooming of that as well, with the payments and it all being sort of like contactless and everything else. This transhumanism agenda that we're seeing as well. So it's really important that we've been able to expose another country where we've been able to look at the, very fast rising sort of like digital public infrastructure and give you a little bit of a breakdown of what's happening north and south of America. Yesterday was Canada, today is Mexico, and being able to see that, yeah, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I need to pray about it and seek the Lord. How am I going to manage this? How am I going to cope with this area? How am I going to address this particular need or provide for me and my family? Some big questions. Maybe some big sacrifices are also there for you to be had. Maybe now's the time to use that before they go bringing everything down and the shutters all come down and everyone's on house arrest because of something kicking off, and it's too late by then. So God bless you guys. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm just going to spending some time with some family, so I'm just going to take a couple of weeks just to sort of like have with them. Really need an opportunity just to have a bit of a recharge and a bit of a reset and rest. It's really, really important. We've been knocking out quite a bit of work recently. There's going to be another video out in a moment, guys. I just need to sort of like finish that up and do a voiceover, whatever, and look forward to that. But God bless you. Thank you to our mods. And for all of you guys for being here, I really appreciate your support and your kindness as well. And also those that come in later. So speaking of later.